Growing up, I was a very big fan of The Jungle Book. Huge fan of The Jungle Book. My parents would probably tell you they took me to the movie theater multiple times to watch The Jungle Book. It would be the equivalent of today's generation going to see Frozen multiple times at the movie theater. That's how much I love the movie. So when a spin-off, figuratively and literally, was added to the Disney afternoon animation block that I would watch every day when I came home from school, I was ecstatic. Talespin was exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. A cartoon starring characters from the Jungle Book. Now, obviously, there were some changes. They took out all the humans that would have originally been featured in the Jungle Book. Some new characters were introduced, like Baloo's sidekick Cloud Kicker and his boss Rebecca Cunningham. But a lot of the familiar characters that you would know from Jungle Book are there in the movie, such as Shere Khan and Louis the Ape, and so on and so forth. They're just all in different roles now. They've all become fully realized human civilization anthropomorphic animals. So think BoJack Horseman. These are animals walking around acting like humans, doing human things, and the whole idea here is that Baloo has become a pilot, a somewhat lazy pilot. He doesn't really want to work hard, but he will when the situation calls for it. And his boss, Rebecca, is constantly egging him on to get off his duff and get into his plane and go deliver some cargo, because he works for a cargo delivery service. And Kit is his best friend, sidekick, protege, whatever you want to call him. The cap that Kit wears was gifted to him by Baloo, so that's a sign of their friendship and trust. And all of this is established in the opening episodes of Talespin, and you don't need me to tell you any more about that, because if you have Disney Plus, you can watch it. If not, you can find some clips of it on YouTube. It's out there, it's available. So when I saw Talespin as a loose Sega Genesis cartridge at one of the shops I frequent, I decided to pick it up. I know this series is called Genesis Does, and that usually means what Nintendo don't, but here's the reasoning behind it being in this episode. To me, this is not even close to being the same game as the NES game. It's completely different in every respect. That was a shooter, this is a platformer, not even the same genre. Also, if Genesis does what Nintendo don't, that usually means Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. That means 16-bit systems. We're talking about a 16-bit game and an 8-bit game. Again, not even the same thing. This Talespin is completely different from the NES Talespin, which I might add, I own complete inbox because, again, big fan of the Jungle Book. I also have a plastic clamshell anniversary edition of the Jungle Book on VHS. I have a stuffed Baloo sitting in my rogues gallery of Mega Man figures and Undertale figures, so you've just got to understand that Jungle Book is like hugely important to me as a kid. So if there's any game called Talespin, I'm going to play it. And this one I was certainly going to play when I saw a loose Genesis cartridge. Would I prefer a complete in-box edition? Of course, but these days that's getting increasingly hard to find and ridiculously expensive when you do find it, whereas the loose cartridge was about $10, so for me that was an easy decision. I still might upgrade it to a complete in-box copy if I ever find one for a reasonable price, but I can wait. It's not urgent. So suffice it to say, there are many different Talespin games. The NES and Game Boy games are both shooters. There are platform games for Genesis and Game Gear and TurboGrafx 16. Here we are talking about the Sega Genesis game, and immediately there are some things that frustrate me. Baloo runs out of air if he's underwater. That makes sense, but there's no sound to warn you of his impending doom. You don't get the sonic that makes you go into a panic and go, God, I gotta find air quick. I gotta get to the surface, or I gotta find a pocket of air or an air bubble. I gotta do something. There's no warning. You just suddenly run out of air and you die. That sucks, especially since you have to collect all the cargo in a level to complete it, and some of it is underwater, so you don't get any audio sound to warn you. You've just got to keep track of it all on your own. Next thing that frustrates me is this pitiful weapon that Baloo uses that sometimes hits the enemies and sometimes doesn't, and seems to be completely useless when it comes to these crabs that bubble up out of the water and grab onto you. See, it's not even shaking them loose. The only thing that gets rid of them seems to be jumping around. Otherwise, they just cling to you until they fall off, and that sucks. It also has a really weird trajectory when you fire it. It doesn't feel good to fire this weapon. You should be able to hit things with a weapon when you have one. I do like the platforming for the most part, except the weight is a little off. That's not a pun on Baloo's size, I swear. It's just when you think you're going to land solidly on something, that's not necessarily the case. And when you try to angle your momentum so you land on something when you spring off it, you're going to have a hard time hitting it exactly. It's not what I would call a floater. You don't hang in the air forever. You're not drifting down forever. But it doesn't feel solid like a Mega Man, Mario, or Sonic game. And unfortunately, for better or worse, when you're talking about platformers, those are the standards that you compare it to. Weight, gravity, momentum, freedom of movement. Those are the things you would expect from a platforming game. Now, it's far from the worst. I mean, this is playable. This is not Awesome Possum levels of bad. I'm sure Jason will appreciate that reference. But it could use some work. It could use a little more polish. And these rocks here. I mean, at least they're not disappearing floating platforms like certain Mega Man levels, but they're not giving you much room to maneuver jumping from one to the next. You can miss it by a half inch either way, and you're going to plummet back down and have to climb up and land on all these rocks again. It just starts to feel tedious after a while. Like, you want a Talespin game to be fun, whimsical, charming, funny, capturing all the qualities of the Disney animation afternoon. You want that same joy that you would get from watching that cartoon block of shows. And you really don't feel it. You see Baloo splatting into the screen over and over again, and you think, why is this fun? I'm torturing this poor bear. What did he do to deserve this? Nothing, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, he's a lazy bear, but that's not a reason to hit him until he splats. Maybe Rebecca Cunningham would disagree with me, but I think he's suffering too much for my enjoyment here, or what would be my enjoyment. I think the thing that really cheesed me off the most while playing Talespin was when I finally collected all the cargo in this level and the screen went from closed to open, indicating that I could go through the exit, and I was immediately thrust into a boss battle. Okay, that's not a bad thing, but there's a crack in the floor in the office during this boss fight, and I didn't know that if you step on the crack, you don't just break your mother's back, you instantly die, and I got a game over. That bites. Shouldn't get a game over the first time you step into a boss fight and you don't know the level and you just get insta-killed by something on the floor when you're trying to move from one side of the room to the other to fight the boss. That seems rude. That seems unnecessary. Thankfully, when I chose the option to continue, it didn't make me clear the entire level again and pick up all the cargo just to get back there again. It immediately took me back to the boss fight. But then it turns out to be a really lame boss fight once you know the crack in the floor is there, because you can just spam your attack and jump over the boss and run to the other side and spam your attack, and that's it. That's the whole pattern of the boss fight. Not really lighting the world on fire with that design. And then you don't even get any sort of reward for completing the objective. No, congratulations, you defeated the boss. No celebration, no extra achievement added to your legend. No score bonus, no musical scene, no animated celebration that you are completing this quest to pick up all the cargo and beat Shirkan Industries to their 7-day goal. You've got to do it faster than them to win this contract from the city that will apparently save the entire cargo business because they'll be guaranteed for life. No mention of any of that. You just immediately get thrust into the next level. And it has an enemy that is impossible to hit and immediately kills Baloo. And at that point, I was like, you know, I'm very affectionate for the Jungle Book, and I thought Talespin was a really fun spin-off, but this is driving me bonkers. And I didn't mean to reference another animated show, but it is. It's just driving me bonkers, and I can't take it. I'm going to have to come back to Talespin another day. I feel like I could master the controls given time. And again, it's far from the worst thing that I've ever played as a platformer. It's just not the best either. Like, if we're going on a 1 to 10 scale, I'm going to give it like 6, 6.5. And a platforming Talespin game should have been an 8 or a 9, should have been a home run. It's just not. It could have been so much better than it is. Like, if you're looking for old school Disney games to play, go with Aladdin, go with The Lion King. Talespin, you can probably take a pass on. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is Genesis Does. And as always, thank you for watching.